Hello, everyone. Um, just give me a second. I am just going to invite my guest.
We had some technical glitches. I'm hoping that it will be fine. Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you a lot better now, and I can see you also a lot more
Okay.
clearly. So let's hope it stays like this.
Yes, I'm so sorry about that. It's very erratic, and I think what's happening is because of the load shedding. It messes up with the towers as well.
Yeah.
But anyways, we're not here to talk about load shedding. We're here to talk about mental health. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. I am very excited to be here. I'm going to introduce my lovely guest. So I have Zahraa Surtee with me here today. I'm a big fan of hers. I love the content that she produces on her page, Heart, Mind, and Psychologist. She is a registered counselor. She's doing a master's in counseling psychology as well. I know you. She's even been on TV. She's also worked at the Oprah Winfrey School as well. And she's, I'm very, very, very excited for her to share some of her thoughts around mental health. Welcome, Zahra.
Thank you so much, Livna. That's such a beautiful way to introduce me. I feel, if anything, I'm just really passionate about mental health, So I hope that my platform inspires people, that my posts kind of resonate with people on that level. Because at the end of the day, it is about educating people and allowing them to kind of see themselves beyond just what the stigma is around mental health, that it doesn't exist. So yeah, thank you very much. I'm really, really honored to be here today on your platform.
And I'm really excited and honored that you are on my platform today talking about mental health. And Zahra, I mean, I know I introduced you. Is there anything else? Do you want to tell some of our listeners, what you do, what you're about?
So I think the best way that I would describe myself is I love expressing emotion through words. I feel like often the world of emotion is so intangible. What is happening on the inside is so difficult to put into words. People don't know what they are experiencing. They feel like they don't have the voice to say it. They feel like there's no platform to say it. And so writing is something which is very dear to me. I spend a lot of time writing and expressing myself through words. I'm also just super passionate about talking about the human experience. So, talking about things which people don't necessarily speak about when it comes to emotion. I feel like there's such a big world inside so many of us. And when we speak it out loud, other people see themselves in us too. And it really helps break that stigma again with regards to mental health, helps educate us with regards to what is actually happening in terms of our emotions.
And you know what I love so much about your posts is that, it's, you always describe about like different types of emotions and all of those kinds of things. And I always find that, I like resonate so much with what you say, and I might not actually have the words or know that I'm feeling that way, but when I read some of your posts, I'm like, yes, that's actually what I feel. That's actually what I'm going through. And I mean, I'm going to sort of jump right into it and ask you, why do you think it's so difficult for us to sometimes channel into our emotions?
I think, Lubna, it has to do with society's view of what is strong and what is weak. I think that we grow up believing that being strong means that I don't show my emotion. Oftentimes, our parents raise us telling us, don't cry, be strong. And so we grow up then confusing strength for holding back my emotion. But that's not sustainable, because as human beings, we are born to feel, we are born to experience. And so I feel like growing up with all of that social conditioning, then seeing on social media everybody kind of living their lives, and it's always the perfect life. Everyone's life is perfect except for ours. It kind of just reinstates that feeling again that we are the only ones who are struggling internally. It's so interesting because I think if you speak to everybody, everybody has a story to tell, but oftentimes we believe that we are the only ones in pain. So a lot of societal conditioning, a lot of the way that we confuse strength and weakness, And what that does is it creates a lot of shame for us. So we grow up feeling very shameful, very ashamed to say I'm struggling, very ashamed to cry. You know, oftentimes people cry and they start apologizing when they cry because it's so unprofessional to cry. And so, yeah, there's a whole lot of different elements, I think, which goes into why we hide. I think hiding has become normal for us because we feel like no one will understand, no one will hear us, no one is actually there for us.
And so that, I think you've mentioned quite a few things, and you mentioned social media and perfect lives, and I definitely want to get into that. But so you're talking about, so why do you think society, or why do you think we are conditioned to feel like we need to hide? Like, you know, what are the feelings that if I expose myself and my emotions, like, you know, why are people scared to do that?
Well, you know, Lubna, I think society is based on roles. We see each other in terms of the roles that we play, right? So if I'm introducing somebody, I don't just introduce them as this is Lubna. I introduce them as, oh, this is Lubna. She's the HR woman. She does A, B, and C, and D, right? So we are taught to fall neatly within these categories of roles. And so suddenly when people know that we are more than the role, especially when we are more emotional, when we struggle with feelings of shame and guilt and sadness, it kind of takes away from the role. You know, there's a bit of shame, there's a bit of fear as to people don't see me just for what I put out there now. So there's also this you know, many people want to be seen for their highlight reels. So as human beings, we obviously want to be wowed at, we want to be acknowledged, we want to be validated. And so the person that we portray is essentially in alignment with that. Again, I think it goes back to, if I show you that I'm struggling, you're not going to think that I'm this person anymore. Suddenly, you're not going to just tell me that I'm a doctor or I'm this, I'm that. I'm suddenly the doctor with depression, the doctor who cried, the doctor who was weak. And even just saying that kind of chips away at that identity that we spent so many years building. Essentially, think about it. As children, the first thing that people ask us, our parents and at school, is, what are you going to be when you grow up? What do you want to be when you grow up? And so we automatically learn that our worth is in who we become, or rather what we become, not who we become, you know? So both something else on the side, and it's strange, it's unfamiliar. There's almost no place for it in society.
I see that. And so now you've referenced social media twice, so that you've mentioned highlight reels as well. And so what do you think the role of social media plays on mental health and the way we see ourselves?
So we are subconsciously wired to compare ourselves. It is almost impossible to see somebody driving a Porsche outside and not for even a second thinking, I wonder what that would be like. Or he looks so happy in it. I wonder what it would be like if I owned a Porsche, right? Social media is that times 100. If you think of how many pictures which you see on a daily basis, every single day you're scrolling, you think that you're doing it very, you know, you're not even fully present. You may be doing it during your lunch break. You're not even putting much energy or attention into it. Your subconscious brain is absorbing that as the standard for how your life should be, right? So if you tend to follow only people who, for example, show pictures of them traveling overseas every single month, so every month is a new picture in a different country, you are more likely to feel like you are not fulfilled in your job because your life doesn't match up to that, right? So we are wired that way to kind of compare ourselves in a very subconscious way and hold that as our standard of what is healthy, what is happy, what is normal. So we then come to define that as the standard of joy and happiness. And again, what does it do? It creates a distance. Because if they are happy and they are in the Maldives and I'm in South Africa sitting in my boring office job, then it's me problem, right? I'm the problem.
Yeah.
What's wrong with me? I'm so ashamed. I'm worthless. It's this whole downward spiral, which is why I always tell people, be very mindful of how you use social media. So, for example, I only follow accounts whose content I actually want to see. If you go to who I'm following, 90% of it is nature, because I absolutely love nature. I love animals. I love seeing those kind of things. So that automatically calms me, it grounds me. But I noticed that when I log onto social media and I see an influx of different people posting things, it creates a different tone for me. It shifts my energy. It makes me feel not as grounded, not as centered. It definitely affects our mental health in so many ways.
Wow. So yeah, I've seen quite a few comments coming now as well around that. Let me just see if I can find some of them. I know that somebody said social media should be cancelled. There was someone else who also said that's what, and it was speaking to your point, Risha, that's why it's important to be selective with who you follow on social media. So I think that you've given that as sort of one of the ways to kind of control how it impacts you and your feelings and your mental health. Like what would you say besides those things? Are there any sort of good social media usage practices that you can do that's going to sort of make you feel less, or for some people less inadequate, or sort of stop people from comparing themselves to others? Do you think maybe that we should stop using filters, for example, or stop posting just about happy stuff? What are your thoughts on that?
I think use social media with a lot of discernment. If, for example, I told you that you're watching a movie and you need to compare your life to the person in the movies, you would think, but it's a movie, I'm only seeing one part of this person's life. I feel like it's very similar when it comes to social media. You are seeing maybe 5%, even less, of this person's life. So don't confuse it for the full picture. And also recognize that the life that people want to show on social media is who they want to be seen as. And sometimes it serves them, right? Sometimes it's a business strategy or whatever it is. But when we are watching other people, don't confuse your behind the scene, or rather don't compare your behind the scenes to their highlight reels. Don't say, I'm struggling at home, my life sucks, and this person is in the Maldives and they're enjoying life. Because you really don't know what happens when they put that phone down. Right? So we have to bring a bit of humanness to social media, I think. That's the main objective. Follow accounts which inspire you. Notice how you feel when you follow people whose content actually affects you. Because it's something which you can subtly feel. Does it affect your mind? Do you feel it in your gut? Do you feel a bit tense? Do you feel a bit anxious? If you actually pay attention to this consciously for about 10 to 15 different posts, you'll be able to gauge for yourself, how are the people who I'm following, how are their content actually affecting me? And am I willing to have that be a part of my day and sit in my subconscious brain and actually impact on my mental health overall? Because it does have a big impact. Even when you're not using social media, it still impacts on your subconscious mind.
I think that's so beautiful, honestly, like just the way you describe it. Like, like I think we all know that, there's a comparison thing and on social media, but like no one's really sort of put it in that way. Like, how do we use it more constructively? And I think your message now, being more mindful about how what you consume makes you feel, like being more conscious of that actually helps you ascertain whether the content that you're consuming is good for you or not. And I think that it's not only social media, you can actually sort of expand that to even like Netflix, for example, or the people that you hang out with as well. Like, when I'm around this person, how do I feel being in their company? Do I feel good? Am I feeling sort of drained after that? Why am I feeling drained? You were saying?
Sorry, I was just going to say, paying attention to the signals around people or around situations is so important. Because if we look at our mental health, it's not just mind, it's mind, body, soul. We are wired to actually tune in to how a specific situation makes us feel. So, which is why it's so important to trust your gut, because your gut already knows. Our conscious mind will always talk us out of it and always say, but this, but that, but stay, but maybe this, but maybe that. But if you actually pay attention to how your body feels, it's often the first indicator to tell you that something is off. And so a very, very big part of mental health is tuning in. What is your body telling you? So mindfulness is not just what thoughts am I thinking, but it's also about conscious awareness of how is my body taking to this person? How am I responding to the posts which I see? How do I respond when I watch a certain movie? Do I feel like I'm not good enough when I'm around this person? You know, these are very questions which help you really figure out where are you in your mental health journey and what do you need? Because your needs are very different to everybody else's needs, and that's okay. That's fine.
I think that's so important. And I love. I actually want to sort of pick up like you're talking about mental health. Your idea of mental health is that it's not just about the mind. So I want to pick up on that. So I think let's pick up on that first. So what is your idea? What is in your words like? What is your idea of what mental health entails? And when you speak about mind and body and soul, what do you mean by that?
So to be very honest, Lubna, I don't really like the word mental health. I use it because that's how we describe what's happening emotionally, but I don't feel like it's fully encompassing because mental health makes us think that it's just from the neck upwards. It places emphasis on the brain. It says that emotion is only caused by the brain. But mental health, or rather our emotional well-being, is not just from the neck upwards. It's also from the neck downwards, right? So if we look at how our heart is affected by emotion, and how people often describe feeling heartbroken, it's not just a mental thing, it's actually a physical thing. Some people actually feel physically heartbroken. If you look at the way your emotions affect your gut health and mental health are so strongly tied that oftentimes people who struggle with anxiety and depression, it's often linked to their gut as well. If you consider your eating habits, if you consider your sleeping habits, it's all essentially linked to how you will experience your emotions on a daily basis. There's then also the spiritual component of it, which I think is very nuanced and very specific to certain people. So some people speak of spiritual calling, some people speak of how they feel intuitively on a deeper level. And that also influences our emotional well-being. It influences how we see the world. So you essentially can't separate the three. It's always useful to consider your mental health in context of what are the thoughts that I'm thinking, what is happening in my brain. That along with what are the bodily cues that I'm getting, what are the sensations that I'm feeling in my body, how am I taking care of this body of mine, what is my gut telling me. Spiritual well-being as well. Some people take to prayer, some people take to meditation. That is also a different component of mental health, but it all essentially leads to the full picture of who you are as a human being. I think it's important to consider who we are in a holistic way. We are not just one thing. We are so to give ourselves what we need. And so it really points to I'm learning who I am as a human being. I'm learning what my needs are so that I can help better give that to myself.
I think that's really lovely, and my next question, and I think you probably have answered that, and maybe if you have more to say around that, you can. Is like you speak about having conscious awareness. Like how does one become aware of oneself and one's feelings and emotions and thoughts?
So again, I would say that it goes to the roles that we play, and it goes to the person who's behind these roles, right? So we each play our roles at our job. So if you are a psychologist, you play that role. You may be a mother, you may be a wife, you may be a sister. So in every single social context, we all play these specific roles. But learning to tune into yourself and to develop conscious awareness is also paying attention to who is behind that role. So when I take the hat off of psychologist, who is that person? Who is the person that I'm spending time with? Am I aware of that person who doesn't always fall into a category of role of mother or sister or psychologist or whatever it is? You know, pay attention to who you are underneath all of that. So being consciously aware is, how do I respond to specific moments in time, irrespective of the role, and when I'm by myself? I feel like it's a very intimate relationship with ourselves that we learn to develop. So, for example, also in when you are performing your work every single day, when you are in a role, are you sucked into that role completely where you lose your sense of self? And that leads to burnout, for example, because now you people pleasing, you may be overextending yourself to other people. Or in that moment, are you consciously aware when your boss asks you to maybe do more than you can handle? Are you consciously aware that that is something that you maybe can't take on? And are you willing to pay attention to that cue? Are you willing to actually listen to it and to maybe speak to your boss and say, you know, I appreciate that you're giving me this responsibility, but I don't think I'll be able to do it. That is being consciously aware of what is happening on the inside, listening to it. Don't push it aside, because our body is very wise, our minds are very wise. They will always communicate to us long before we reach the point of burnout, for example.
I really like that you bring up burnout, because I've been speaking to so many people, and now it's close to the end of the year. You know, it's our second year into the pandemic, and I promise you, every second person I speak to and I ask them, "How are you doing?" they speak about, "I am mentally exhausted.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm reaching burnout."
Yeah.
What, you know, from a psychologist's perspective, I mean, especially for people, so those are still the people that are a little aware. Then I also find other people that look like they're close to burnout, but they don't seem to be aware, or they cannot acknowledge to themselves that they're reaching that point. What are the signs that you're reaching burnout? You know, how can people become, how can we make people more aware of you know, what it feels like to reach that point? Or how can we sort of determine that we're getting to that point before we actually, you know, reach that stage of being burnt out? I know it's a very tough question.
Yeah, you know, I think it's a very important question. I think because it's so specific to people. So burnout looks very different on different people, especially because we all have different self-care strategies, right? So someone may be towards the end of the year but may not reach burnout because they've been taking care of themselves during the entire year. Other people, it may be a culmination of maybe a lack of self-care that leads to them burning out very slowly. But I think that the easiest way I would kind of describe it is, how do you know when you are very hungry? How do you know when you're reaching that point where you are really, really hungry or thirsty? Your body will always tell you. So your body will always communicate to you, I'm hungry, feed me, I can't do anything else. Burnout starts like that. It's a small nudge of, I'm really exhausted, pay attention, I can't do this. You know, if we don't listen to that, it's then a build-up. So it's a build-up then of irritability, maybe frustration, maybe not doing as well at work as you would have liked or you would have planned. You know, maybe disconnecting yourself a bit from social interactions. So it affects different people very, very differently. But I think our body will communicate to us that sense of utter exhaustion. So, you know, even waking up in the morning, not being able to get out of bed, feeling like you don't want to go to work, feeling like you can't do anything. Those are typical signs usually which people tell us about.
I'm so happy that we're talking about these things, because I think so many people are at that stage, but it's difficult. Sometimes you just don't have a word for what it is. It's like, oh, maybe I just had too many late nights, or, you know, I'm just worried about this one thing, you know. But, you know, it's so important to sort of label these things so that people become more aware of it. You mentioned something around self-care strategies. So can we talk a little bit about what does self-care mean to you, firstly?
So, you know, I think self-care has been glamorized on social media as something which you take yourself out for supper, you have bubble baths, you treat yourself every now and then. And I think that's maybe the external element of self-care. But I think sustainable self-care is a daily practice of consciousness about what your body needs, what your mind needs, what your soul needs. And so I think, self-care is not something that's a one-size-fits-all strategy. I think that everyone's self-care is very different depending on who the self is. So everybody's selves needs different things. I often describe it in terms of mind, body, soul, self-care, right? So what is my mind communicating to me that it actually needs right now? Is it maybe feeling too tired from thinking too much or from studying too much? Does it maybe need more rest? Do I need to switch my mind off? How do I do that? Okay, so different people have different strategies. For me, for example, I find watching TV really exhausting and really draining. So I stay away from watching TV. For me, spending time in nature really soothes me and really grounds me. It helps me to separate all of the messy thoughts from the more calm, the more centered thoughts. So that is a big part of my self-care. If we look at bodily self-care, it's again paying attention. What are my cues? What are the cues that my body is sending me? Am I feeling exhausted? Where in my body am I feeling exhausted? Do I feel a bit tense? Do I feel a bit anxious? Is it sitting in my gut? And then what can I do about that? How can I help that? So for example, do I maybe need to take a step away from work? Do I maybe need to go for a walk? Maybe I need to do some exercise. That can be physical self. But again, it depends on who the self is, and it depends on what your specific needs are as the self. And then I think there's also spiritual self-care. So for me, prayer and meditation is essential every single day. That actually is the biggest component for me from mind, body, soul. It's the spiritual component is the absolute biggest one for me. But that's because that's me. That works for me. So for me, that entails really separating myself from the role that I play. So taking a back seat and figuring out who that person is again, getting in touch with the person behind the role of psychologist, student, or whatever it is. Meditation and prayer gives me that space to kind of take a back seat. And so, I think, Lubna, self-care is such a broad topic, but I think a good starting point is to essentially ask yourself, what do I need? What is myself telling me about my needs? If you pay attention to your mind, what are the cues? What are the specific thoughts that I'm thinking about every day? What are the thinking patterns that's maybe keeping me stuck? If you go to physical level, where am I storing tension in my body? What does my body actually need? So you can compartmentalize it, break it down, and really figure out what you need as a person. Because again, it's very individualized, it's very specific, but it's very essential to your mental health. Because nobody else can give you essentially what you need, right? People can give you from the outside. So people can come and maybe buy you a meal, or they can love you and hug you and give you all of those things, which are really beautiful complementary practices to your mental health. But self-care is turning it inwards, and it's asking yourself, but this person who is on the inside, how am I learning how to tune into that person? How am I developing a relationship with that person? It's not just depending on the external, it's now also focusing your attention on the internal.
I really, really love that. Like, self-care is like tuning inwards, and like we think about self-care, like you said, in terms of bubble baths, retail therapy, going to a spa day and stuff like that. And those are all great, but those are all sort of outward things. And I like the reminder of saying, yes, those are outwards, but what about what's happening inside? And so really what I keep on hearing is, looking after your mental health means sort of learning about who you are and what you are and what your needs are, and sort of stripping away all the little titles and roles that you have, and really, really trying to go deep in to see, what is it that you need?
Exactly that. It's an intimate connection with yourself, right? So what everybody does for us and what we offer to ourselves on a daily basis externally is complementary, and it's necessary for us to survive. But if you, for example, have to take a flower right? And if you only look at the petals, and if you only look at the leaves, and you say, okay, it looks like you're withering, maybe I'm going to attend to the thorns, I'm going to attend to the leaves, but you're not focusing on the roots, it's only going to take you so far. It's not going to be sustainable, right? Similarly with us, it's about turning inwards. And I know turning inwards can be very difficult, because some people have been trying to avoid that for a while, because it's scary to actually sit with yourself and to face your thoughts and to face your feelings and to face your fears. It can be really scary. It's not a simple process, right? Which is why self-care can become so convoluted by the media, especially social media, because we are all trying to develop this relationship with ourselves. But it's good to admit that it is challenging. It's not just a simple one-step process, but I think that it's necessary. It's essential for our overall mental health, and it's also a lot more sustainable, because when we turn inwards, when we actually learn to develop that connection and relationship with ourselves, we discover that we are so much more than just the roles that we play, Lubna. I feel like it's one part of our life, so we can be psychologists and doctors or whatever it is, but it's one part of our life. And when we come home and when we sit with ourselves, that part also needs attention. That part is also saying, I'm still here. I'm the one who's been helping you. I'm the one who's been helping you academically. I'm the one who takes you to work. I'm the one who allows you to be so successful. Sitting with that person is also really, really important.
So I know you've mentioned asking yourself those questions, but how do you really sit with yourself? Like if we put it in practice and we're talking about sustainable practices of self-care, like how do you get to know yourself better? How do you sit with yourself? How do you turn inwards?
So for me, the best way which works for me is writing. Writing for me is a very unconscious process. So I don't write and I don't ask myself, what do you want to write about today? It's kind of like I write because it needs to come out. It needs a form of expression, right? So I would maybe advise people to ask themselves, what is their form of expression? How do they express themselves? So for some people, it could be writing. For other people, it could be maybe talking to the therapist or talking to a friend who listens. So to kind of give that emotion a voice, give it a space. Doesn't matter how you do it, whether it's painting or whether it's art, but give it a voice. So allow it to actually become external to you so that you can see it. So it's not just all living inside of you. I feel like that's a very good way of building that relationship with ourselves, of learning to actually see, okay, this is what is happening on the inside of me. When it's more external to me, I can see it. So yeah, art is very therapeutic. Therapy is obviously very therapeutic. Writing is very therapeutic. Yeah, I would say it depends on what you are drawn to as your means of expression.
Okay, and I think I resonate a lot with that as well. For me personally, I really struggled to write or to journal for years. I just couldn't do it, and then the pandemic hit, and I think that then I just started writing, and I felt like it started flowing again as well. And I do find that it's just amazing what comes out. And I do find that for me also specifically journaling, whether it's just writing about why I feel angry about something or why I feel sad about something, or for example, if somebody said something and it really upsets you and you actually want to tell them off for something, if you write about it, by the time you talk to them, it's sort of in a better mental space to actually deal with it constructively. So I do find, for me specifically as well, that journaling helps, but I also want to tell people as well that it didn't come naturally. It took like sort of years to kind of sit with it, and then to the point where now I find it very fruitful. Every sort of interaction with a pen and a paper helps with that as well.
It's definitely not for everybody, and that's okay, right? So that's why I say find what works for you. Find what is your means of self-expression. You know, if you can develop a practice where you can slowly ease into it and the words can start flowing, then that's a very beautiful way. But you know, there's so many different ways to express ourselves. But I think that the main point of this is don't allow what is happening inside of you to fester. So, for example, you speaking about maybe sometimes you feel angry towards somebody, and you can't let it out. Letting it out on paper is a means of expressing it versus keeping it on the inside because you feel too ashamed to say it, for example, because you feel like it doesn't matter. So you kind of make it smaller than what it really feels like for you. Those kind of things just tends to make us feel like our emotions don't have a place, and then it only festers that feeling of shame again, of when I do feel like this, I can't tell anyone, I can't express it because there's no safe space for me to express it. So find your safe space of emotional expression. I think that's very important.
And I also think, and I like that, find your safe space, wherever that is. And I also feel like, yes, you know, it might fester and sit with you, but it will come out in very unconstructive ways. So don't think that if you're sitting with you know, difficult emotions, that you know that you can suppress it, that it will, you know, you can keep it under wraps, and that it does come out. And unfortunately, you know, when it is suppressed, it comes out in very sort of ugly ways sometimes.
Yeah, exactly, because it's a build-up. It's a build-up of what's happening internally, and it needs a space to go. When you suppress your emotions, it doesn't disappear from your body. It's still there. It's waiting to be expressed, right? And then it's going to be like a pot which is boiling with water, and eventually it boils over, and that's how it's going to, which is important to always talk about emotions, even when you feel like it's not important, right? Which is the aim really of destigmatizing mental health, that the feelings which you think are not important, sometimes we kind of, you know, talk down to our emotions because we feel like, oh, but no one will understand, or why am I being sad? Why am I upset? Why am I frustrated? There's all of these I shoulds. So I should be happy if I have A. I should feel successful if I have B, right? But if you don't, you don't, and that's okay. But give that feeling a space, give it a voice, give it a platform, allow it to be expressed so it doesn't take, you know, full control of you externally. I mean, internally.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. I think it's very important, and I actually find, especially I think in the Indian culture, um, I find that it's sort of more kind of you're more rewarded for suppressing the feelings than to actually let it out. And what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking back to some of the phrases which are so common of, wow, you are so strong. Wow, I've never seen you complain. I've never seen you cry. Have patience, you know, the typical make sabr statement, which for if
Yes.
some people don't know, that means have patience.
Mm.
Those are terms which are really, I think they are said with good intention sometimes. But I think we don't understand the repercussions of that. Because what that communicates to me is, oh, when I'm strong, I'm seen. When I'm strong, I'm validated. When I don't cry, people notice. What is the inverse of that? When I do cry, when I'm weak, when I'm vulnerable, who's going to notice? Who's going to tell me that I'm strong? Who's going to actually hold me? I'm actually going to feel more ashamed if I show that to people. And so the natural human thing there is to hide it as a protection mechanism. I need to protect myself from feeling that sense of vulnerability. I feel like the Indian community, you know, I don't know what it is about emotion. I feel like a lot of our ancestors have been through so much, traveled across different lands for us to be here today. And they didn't have the space to talk about their feelings. And I understand it because they had to survive. They had to put food on the table for their kids. They had to send them to school and they had to clothe them. And that was what life was about. And I completely understand that. But that has filtered into a culture for us of there's no room for emotion. It's only about
Mm-hmm.
how successful I am or what role I can fulfill, or you know, when aunties ask you at functions, oh, what are you doing? It's never who are you? Are you happy? Or
Yeah.
how are you really doing? You know, tell me about yourself.
Yeah.
It's always, oh, are you married? Do you have kids? Are you,
When's the second one coming?
yes, when is the second one coming? When is this happening? Where do you work? It's always about everything else on the outside. And I think as a result, we've kind of come to believe that who we are on the outside is all that we are essentially seen for. But yeah, I think that I mean, our generation is slowly breaking that, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many generational trauma breakers, I think, who are realizing that there's more to me than just how my parents see me. There's more to me than just the roles which I needed to fulfill. You know, and they're actually turning inwards again, discovering that my pain, my hurt, my upsetness, my anger, it all has a space, and it's valid and it's okay. And even if they can't talk about that with family necessarily, I think what I admire is that a lot of Indian women talk about it with other people, you know, so either their therapists or their friends, but they make it known,
Mm-hmm.
they give it a voice again, and that's their safe space
Mm-hmm.
to express what's happening in their world.
I think, yeah, I think that's also, I would actually like to sort of tackle that as a topic of its own, like mental health in traditional homes, because I don't only think, I think some of the challenges that we face in the Indian community around mental health can actually be um, extended to the African cultures and Chinese cultures, you know, all these like not non-Western cultures, where it's maybe even taboo to speak about mental health, where, you know, mental illnesses don't even exist in the home. So I feel like that's like a huge topic on its own, and I'd love to go into that, but we've got 12 minutes left. The session went very, very quickly, and I feel
So
like I
fast,
really,
time went. I feel like I wasn't even
I
looking
need,
at the time.
I feel like I need to have you back. So, well, I'll definitely be speaking to you offline around that. But I think I'd like to sort of start winding down now. And I'd also like to, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask the people on the call if you have sort of any comments or any questions, especially around mental health and holistic health. Please feel free to type it in the comment section, or you can ask anonymously in the question box as well. We'll be happy to tackle it. So Zahra, I think, yeah, I mean, I don't want to bring up something new because I feel like we'll be here till
Yeah,
tomorrow.
yeah.
But I mean, I think what would you like to sort of leave people with? Like, what message would you like to leave people with around mental health?
Whew. I think there's so many different messages, but I think the one that stands out to me the most is it doesn't matter whether your pain makes sense. It doesn't matter whether it is justified. It doesn't matter whether nobody sees it or you feel like it's stupid or silly or crazy, which are some of the labels we call ourselves when we feel a certain way. All of those things don't matter, because what you do feel is always valid. It may be the smallest nudge, it may be the smallest pain, it's still valid. Just like if you had to get hurt physically, that pain is valid. And it's valid because we can see it and people can recognize it. Even if people can't see and recognize your internal, it's still valid. It's still there because you can see it. Don't turn your eye away from it because other people can't see it. Don't turn your eye away from it because you feel like it doesn't have a space. If it doesn't have a space at home with your family or your friends or whoever it is that you are with, give it a space and allow it a space. It can be your therapist's office. It can be somebody who you really trust. But it's always important to acknowledge. It's always important to speak out loud what is on the inside. I feel like that is such a big part of mental health. You know, it's about giving credit to this entire inner world that we have on the and not just shoving it away because society tells us to be strong. Redefine what strength is for you. Strength can also be reaching out for help. Strength can also be facing what you are feeling, simply acknowledging it or giving it a voice. I know that for me, that's what strength is. Weakness, on the other hand, I think, is when we hide, you know, because we are the ones who struggle with it. So do allow yourself to be strong by reaching out for help.
I think that's such a beautiful message. And I hope that, you know, I see there's lots of hearts coming up there, and I see there's a lot of people that resonate with what you're saying. I think that that's lovely. Like, you know, I think for me, what I'm going to take away from this discussion is this idea of, you know, giving your emotions a safe space. Because that, you know, give it a space so that, and sit with it, but give it the safe space. There's a way of managing the emotion, and that's really cool. And the second thing is, weakness does not mean not feeling. You know, weakness is actually facing up to the emotions and facing up to the feelings.
Exactly.
And also, yeah, and I think the last thing, which was also not shying away from it. And just because other people are not seeing it, don't invalidate your own feelings.
Exactly that. Yeah, that's exactly it. You know, I think when we all validate our own emotions, we help break the stigma of mental health. It starts with us. It's not just something out there, you know, where we speak about mental health and that's how our conversations only help break the stigma. No, it's an individual effort, Lubna, because when you are more okay with your own emotions, when you are more likely to speak about your emotions with other people, or to show people that it's okay to be vulnerable in the spaces which you feel safe in, what does that do? It gives them the permission to do the same, because now they see that you can do it. And then it's a ripple effect, and it's a ripple effect. So don't ever underestimate the power of actually being authentic with how you're feeling. It really, really affects so many people around you in a positive way. And I feel like that's the change. That's the mental health stigma, which is essentially being broken every single time somebody chooses to validate their feelings instead of step away and shy away from it.
I see. So yeah, so big stigma is actually just like not acknowledging people's feelings and what they're going through. And if we can start doing that, we'll start helping ourselves and other people to actually go through the feelings.
Yeah. You know, I feel like when we make what is not immediately seen external, we show people that it's okay for them to do the same. When we don't just give empathy to people for a broken leg or a broken arm, but when we empathize with people because they are crying, instead of telling them don't cry or be strong or but you should be grateful or but you have a when instead you just sit with them and you say, I'm here and I see you and I hear you and I can imagine that it's so hard, but I just want to tell you that I'm here. That is powerful. That creates so many movements. I think essentially so many people just want to be seen. They want to be accepted. There's such a fear that if we show our emotion, we're not going to be accepted. People are going to think differently about us. People are going to shun us. People are going to shame us. That's why I say find your safe spaces, but create that safe space within yourself first. Build that within yourself for you to be vulnerable with yourself first.
And I think what's also important is that not everyone is going to be a safe space as well. So to identify who you can be vulnerable with.
Yeah.
Because
it's a very, I feel like that also is like a whole different discussion, but I mean, it is an important point, right? You can't just go and tell everyone how you're feeling, because the way that they respond might actually do you more harm, right? It may actually make you feel 10 times worse that this person shamed me essentially for expressing how I'm feeling. Oftentimes it's the people who are very open-minded, non-judgmental, the people who truly take the time to listen to you, the people who don't impose what they think you should do. The people who don't necessarily immediately give you advice, the people who listen, those are usually the people who feel like safe spaces. Many of us have at least one person in life who's like that. And then one person is always gold, because we know that come rain or shine, that person we can always speak to about how we're feeling, and they're not judging us for the role which society sees. They know that we are so much more, and it's okay to be human.
Yeah. So thank you so much for that. We've got 4 minutes left, but I see there's a few comments here. So Play of Nature says informative presentation. And I think I saw, give me a second here as well. Yeah. So Bolter Strength says it's important to educate people that the emotions, opinions, and self-care matters. Talks like these need to be done often to help those who are silenced. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're doing this. Actually, it's to make it, to sort of actually make people be okay with talking about this. I mean, if we start talking about it in public spaces, it makes, it sort of gives other people the permission to also be okay with talking about these topics. And I believe that that's very important.
But can I also say that I think they said talking about people who are silenced. That is so powerful, because people who don't have the space to express themselves are silenced. They are told to be strong. It's a form of silencing. And so, that's a very powerful thing to actually consider. Where can you express your voice out loud without being silenced?
I think that is very important. There's a question here. One more question I think that we'll take, which is if you're okay with that. Nelly Dwayne says, how can we start creating safe spaces within ourselves?
So I think, it depends again on who you are, what your needs are, and what is the relationship that you currently have with yourself. It always, think of it in terms of when you in a new relationship, right? You see that as a form of, I need to build this relationship. So I need to learn how to connect with the person. I need to communicate with the person. I maybe need to listen out for their interests so that I can actually take an interest myself in what they are interested in. I need to make them feel loved, feel heard, and I need to be empathetic towards them, amongst many different things that make up our relationships. If you take those same elements and you turn it towards yourself, I want you to ask yourself, how can I connect with myself? What do I need? When can I be more loving, kind, and compassionate with myself? Am I actually taking interest in what I am interested in? Or am I compromising myself? Right? So think of yourself in terms of any other relationship and start from there. Start in terms of more basic things. How am I connecting with this person? Right? So tune into what your bodily cues are. Tune into what your specific thought patterns are. Tune into what you're actually feeling. And ask yourself, what do I need at this specific moment in time? Okay, I'm going to try and give it to myself. If you do that consistently, your body learns that you are listening, and your body learns that you are more reliable than maybe you were in the past. So it will send you more signals and say, okay, she's listening. So I'm going to tell her what I need. It's a two-way relationship. And after a while, it starts to feel beneficial. It starts to feel wholesome. Why? Because we are actually listening to what our body's telling us.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And I think for me, personally as well, I think I found that like my body and my mind was always telling me things. It's just that it was just for me to start listening.
Yeah.
And it is very difficult to start that journey. But once you do it a little bit, and you actually see that you come away feeling a little better. Like even something small, for example, sometimes if we're having a favorite meal, we can overeat. But our body actually tells us, you're full now, you need to stop. And we all feel that. So it's actually just about stopping and listening to it. And that will actually so listening to your body. If you're feeling ill after eating something, maybe you shouldn't be eating that. If you feel drained after being in someone's company, maybe they're not the best company for you. you know. So
Yeah.
I think those kinds of things are examples of how you can listen to yourself and to listen to your body.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It all starts with listening. Again, any relationship that I can't give you what you need if I'm not willing to listen. I want to listen to what your needs are. And so, yeah,
Mm,
actually paying attention. Like you said, paying attention. How does your body respond around
mm,
people, around food, around the work
mm,
you do? You know, because I think it's a constant pathway of communication the whole day. We just don't necessarily tune in all the time. Our body is always
mm,
communicating with us every second of every single day, right? But taking a step back, pausing, and actually saying, okay, it feels a bit off around this person. Let me explore that a bit.
mm,
What is it about this person that maybe makes me feel off? Do I actually feel happy when I'm around this person? Maybe I should spend a bit less time with this person or manage my
mm,
relationship with this person. So,
mm.
yeah, there's so many different avenues which you can take to explore these different parts of yourself.
Yeah. Zahra, it's like time. I really, really, really loved having you and chatting to you as well. I'm definitely going to, um, see if we can do another collaboration sometime soon. Thank you so much for sharing your pearls of wisdom. I just love the way, you view mental health and looking after yourself. And I feel like, I've learned so much just from listening to you speak.
Thank you so much, Lubna. I always enjoy speaking about mental health. It's not just a job for me, it's a passion. It's something that we all go through, and using these kinds of platforms, using social media for these kinds of conversations makes it more beneficial. It again brings the humanness into this. So yeah, thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to have more conversations about this. Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I see Nelly Dwayne says, wow, thank you so much, ladies. This is so helpful. I'm so glad. And yes, see Mid21 says, love this live. Thanks, ladies. Matpulome, I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce that correct. She says, thank you so, so much for this conversation. I learned tons.
Oh, thank you
Okay,
so
I'm so happy, guys. Yeah. Thank you, Zahra. I'll chat to you again. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us.
much,
And I
Lubna.
hope you have a wonderful evening.
You too. Take care. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.